Today I'm talking to Sharath Kuruganty. He's the host of the Undefeated Underdogs podcast. He's a software entrepreneur and he's striking a really interesting balance between personal priorities and his business life. We talk about his SaaS efforts, his podcast, what it means to run a podcast as a solopreneur, and many, many more interesting things. This episode is sponsored by Acquire.com. More on that later. Now here is Sharath. Sharath, it is so nice to talk to you. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing, I would say not good as well as not bad. I'm kind of in the balance,
Okay.
a lot of things going on these days, back to back, which are kind of unexpected. And I kind of think that the universe is kind of testing my patience,
Oh, wow.
how patient can you be or how much you believe in yourself. You see what I'm saying? So I think I'm in that testing phase. So generally my answer is I'm doing fantastic regardless. But I think these days I'm kind of like going through a lot of lows, uh, compared to a lot of highs generally. Uh, but I think, yeah, overall, I'm just grateful. I'm breathing. I have a roof to live. I have, clothes to wear, and I'm talking to you. So
Ah.
I'm blessed.
Well, I really appreciate you just being honest from the get-go. Like that is such a build-in public founder thing that you're currently doing. That's just like, no, it's not perfect, and we can talk about it. And I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to diving into this because I know that feeling, and I occasionally have it myself. And I try to overcome it by just sharing it and giving other people the opportunity to just see themselves and their own peril and their challenges reflected in it. So what's currently occupying your mind? You are, for me, somebody who shares a lot of stuff. You're building in public. You're sharing your personal life and parts of your personal life as they intersect with your professional life. And I always see you as somebody who's trying to strike a balance in many different ways. So what's keeping you off balance nowadays?
So I think this can be really, really petty for people who are listening who has like a bigger problem, like going through like health problem or something like that. So I'm not comparing anything. I'm just going through like a lot of I think I would say tough for me, particularly in my case, because I'm currently jobless. So for folks who are listening, I'm an open agent. If you're listening and if you're hiring, please talk to me. We can talk a lot about that. But yeah, so that is something that's kind of like, I know it's, if I look back, I've been in these situations many times, meaning I've fallen many times. I've also kind of risen many times, right? So it's not new to me that I'm in this position. It's just new in this situation, which is we just bought a new house. Uh, Two, my wife's pregnant. We're expecting a baby boy in the next like 4 or 5 weeks. So it's just like, is it the right timing? Is what my mind is right now. So I'm kind of in that phase where I kind of want to deny the fact that, hey, why is it happening to me, at this time? But at the same time, there is another side which is like, hey, man, yeah, life's great. Just be grateful for everything you have. So I'm watching this show on Netflix. I forgot the show name. It's about like evolution, going back to like millions of years ago. Morgan Freeman narrates it. I think life. Uh, I don't know what show it is, but we
Life on
can talk it
Earth?
later. Life on Earth. Yeah, that's the thing. And in that particular show, he reminds us that once in a while, a civilization, a species comes to life and they fade away. They come to life and fade away. So that is something that I'm keeping in mind when I go through these times. Like, we are going to fade away. It's just a matter of years. Nobody's going to remember us. Nobody's going to remember like uh, our the work we do. Everything is going to fade away eventually. So that keeps me humble. But anyway, long, to just wrap up the answer. Yeah, it's kind of like off balance because I want to build some things. I want to do my podcast at peace, but this thing is like disturbing. Hey, you're kind of you're not doing anything. So I'm kind of have to practice more self-love, I would say. So I'm, to be very honest, I'm in that situation, juggling between that and like perspective, that and perspective. So it's kind of like a struggle, ongoing struggle. And I think we talked about in my podcast as well. That is something that I'm accepting. Okay, it's a struggle. It is what it is. Let's actually kind of see the half glass full. I'm more of like a half glass full guy generally, but sometimes you stumble, right? And it's okay to stumble. And I keep telling myself, okay, it's a phase. It'll go back. You once you pass it, you look back. It feels like you made it through. Uh, but living through is like kind of very tough. Again, there are many ridiculously hard problems people face. Compared to that, this is pretty much nothing. So I'm just grateful. But the thought is kind of like putting me off balance. And as you know, you might have noticed as well, I'm not that active on Twitter uh, or social, because I don't want to fake or kind of provide knowledge when I'm not feeling knowledgeable, right? I'm not going through these experiences. I can't like promote or teach. Again, in your words, you're a teacher. Generally, I see myself as well, learn and teach. That's like the cycle, right? We all live as as founders, entrepreneurs. So I'm not teaching anything because I'm not learning anything at this moment. I'm just going through that you know that weird phase. But anyway.
It's funny. It's funny that you say that, because in talking about this right now, you are teaching. It's just that you're not like intentionally transmitting wisdom that you qualify as wisdom, but I think a lot of like the teachers that I remember from school. That's kind of my framework when I think about like the epitome of teaching, right? Which is not obviously there's other kinds of teaching, but the ones that I resonated with as a kid were real people that I could relate to. They were not some kind of authority figure that tried to keep everything perfect and their reputation and their status, and then they would give you the divine wisdom that they had. Those people I didn't like, but the people who were just people like me with hobbies, with problems, those I could relate to, build a relationship with, and through their experience, learn something from my own. And I think particularly among entrepreneurs, your situation right now is so incredibly common among all of us most of the time, right? It might not be the exact same thing and it might not be the same kind of problem. I really appreciate that you say that this might not be a big problem for others who have bigger problems, but it is a problem for you. Right? I recall I had champagne problems that when we sold our business and we had like all that money, all of a sudden new problems came up that felt just as critical. Of course, we knew they weren't, like compared to somebody else, but even compared to ourselves a couple of years ago, after before the sale, money was a problem. Afterwards, it was not, but new problems come up. And I think it's important to recognize that your problems are uniquely yours. And it's kind of, it's unfair to yourself to disqualify them as problems, right? That's all I'm going to say about this. Like your situation now is uniquely yours to solve, and everybody's situation is kind of similar in that way, just unique to them. So all that considered, I find it very, very interesting to hear you speak about, what was it? Give me a second. I'm trying to formulate a thought here. We're going to edit this out, but um, I I find it very interesting that you talk about this kind of internalized need to do something. That's something that I kind of heard just now, right? When you're unemployed, you're trying to look for a job. Of course, there's finances involved in there, but it also is often, I guess, a cultural thing that you internalize. I must work. I must produce. I would like to know how this is for you, because for me personally, I come from like an East German kind of cultural background. There was a lot of hard working and, working your way up, and you have to be present. You have to work. You have to provide. You have to show that you do something. How is that for you?
Oh man, I can talk about hours if you have time, because going back to my childhood, there were we kind of are programmed by the society. A lot of us, when I come from India, same culture, similar culture, I would say, at least. If you're not working, or if you, so basically they tag everything that you do to respect. So everybody wants to be respectable, right? And I think the need to be respectable is something like I consider as a disease in the first place. It's a virus. There is no end to it. Like you said, you go through life, you grow, and you face new problems. In the same way, I think this is one of the problem. Like there is no end to it. Like people crave for respect all the time, and that actually is going to hurt them. So where I come from, oh my god, I have to like rewire a lot of things when I came to the US. Self love. You basically have to be in your own thoughts, do your own thing, chase your own lane, don't compare. I think those are all completely opposite where I came from. It's always like, judgmental, always, all the time. Be it relatives, be it friends, be it general society. So they make you, put a stamp on you saying that, hey, if you're not doing XYZ, you're basically born to it. Not just from a work standpoint, like personally, you can't marry, you can't take divorce. It's like a biggest thing. You're basically stamped. You're very uncertain in life. They don't consider people's feelings in that way, right? So I can, yeah, it's worse. And the thing I relearned or rewired when I came here is to see people becoming more abundant and expressing themselves authentically, and people actually respect that more than what you do or what you produce. So I kind of like found a way to be authentic. So my biggest superpower is being authentic. And if I people can take anything from me except that. They can take basically everything. Like, and I can start from zero by being very authentic, talking to people authentically, being expressing authentically. And there are also downsides, as you know, right? Like, it's not always like rosebud when you be expressive authentic. There are like, you kind of, encourage people to like, throw shit at you and all that. But it's fine. It's fine playing in your own lane because you want to play in your own lane, not because other people want to play in their lane. So I think that's where I kind of, uh, learn to rewire myself. Okay, let's be fucking authentic. That's it. Don't worry about anything else.
And you do it well, right? I see you building in public. No matter if you post a lot or not, like your personal situation, that is it has to come from an honest place, right? And if you don't feel like it, then you shouldn't. I think it's a pretty valid approach to sharing what you do and what you don't do. I think it's perfectly fine. But I do wonder, has the consciously and intentionally building in public and sharing this kind of stuff made it easier for you to deprogram yourself from these
Oh,
expectations?
yes, yes. So the first time I kind of like started expressing myself, I've had mixed signals, like even from my wife. Hey, why are you sharing certain things? You're not supposed to share because we're not supposed to share, right? So the if you ask people who come from Eastern culture, we don't generally do things in public. We generally do things in private, especially within our family. And there is also like a notion that when you share, something bad will happen.
Mm-hmm.
I would actually like slap that person who said that, 'cause when I shared everything, everything good happened to me. Like over the years. So that is fundamentally where I learned to be like, oh wow, the benefits, the pros, the upside of building in public is ridiculously good. Whether so that's why I actually kind of am leaning far from building. I'm doing everything in public. Like
So being in
highest.
public, right?
So yeah, living in public. I would
Yeah.
say I think, the building in public is sometimes very, congested to what you do professionally, and that's it. That's the end period. But try to actually be authentically sharing, expressing what you're going through internally in your mind. Try that, and people will find very interesting about someone expressing, and they get the courage to do the same thing. So I feel that is really important. So when someone like people like Ryan Hoover, it's not new. Billing in public is becoming like a trend now, but generally people are doing ages, like, there were like, so it's all like there. I found courage when I saw certain people expressing either loss, either like, going through tremendous amount of time. That actually gave me like confidence. So you know what? I don't want to go to that extent. So one thing I say to people when they ask me about how do you build in public, baby steps. Period. Don't share like I'm going through, divorce. Share that I'm having a bad day. That's it. So start really, really small. Like you're going through like, you're not getting customers. Start sharing like what are some things that you failed at getting customers. So I think if you take baby steps consistently over time, it becomes second nature. And the upside, that is a separate episode, I would say.
Well, I think one of the upsides that I personally have felt myself and that I also see you benefiting from is you just said something like a couple minutes ago around like if somebody were to take this all away from you, would start again, but you wouldn't start from zero, right? You have something that your presence, people enjoying you being around them and they trusting you with your knowledge and with your honesty. That is stuff that no business catastrophe can take away from you, because that's kind of your personal brand, for the lack of a better term, right? That's just you being projected into the world and people resonate with that. And that's the massive upside, right? No matter what happens to any of your projects, even like you lose your job, well, people still love you, maybe even more for the fact that you talk to them about it, right? That is just this perpetuated, well-meaning intent that people have in a relationship with you.
Yeah, 100%. Oh my God. I think, like you said, I think that's what I think when we do things in public, generally Eastern culture, they say hate is going to go, hate is going to grow. People are going to like talk about you a lot. It's quite opposite. Like people love you, and not everybody is going to love you. That's the biggest star right there. That's the biggest disclaimer. If you do things in public and assume that everybody wants to love you, you're going to fail. People like you find you, and people like exactly in your mindset, in your wavelength, are going to embrace you. They're going to love you. They're going to like share support for you. So I think that is enough. You don't have to have everything. So there is a lot of philosophy in building in public, if you think about it, right, Arvid? Like enough, like less is enough. And especially when you do things in public, you realize that more you have like 100 customers, that's enough. You don't have to have a million people looking at you. So I would say doing things in public, do that with that mindset, so that you will be at peace, or else you'll be constantly judging yourself. Am I doing this right or wrong? Am I doing this? I was there. Trust me, I was there. Like when I share something in public, something is not working. Am I doing this right? Absolutely, you're doing this right, but just not resonating with the right people. That's the answer. So I would judge less when you do things in public, and tinker, like build that craft, make that skill over time by expressing yourself in quite different ways.
Well, you just mentioned mindset. I think it's one of the core, like, underlying foundations of doing anything really in public or not, right? But doing anything to a certain end. I would like to know, how do you currently approach these opportunities? Maybe side projects or media projects like your podcast, or things that work, things that don't work. What's your mindset right now that you apply to these things?
It's all muscle building. That's it. It's all like, if I'm doing podcasts, that means I'm building a muscle of asking great questions. I started terribly. If you listen to the first episode of mine, I was very nervous. I was, stuttering a lot, kind of had a lot of ums, and I didn't steer the conversation. And I'm grateful Jack Butcher, came onto the show as a first guest, which is amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But I started like completely being an amateur. Side projects. The first project I did, called Tools for Makers. It was just a directory of tools. In building that versus what I'm building right now is far more complex. So I think the way I approach these projects are about building that muscle in that particular skill. Like for building, it's building projects, maybe design. How can I be better in terms of executing that product? With collaborating. So I'm learning again. I was a solo maker. Now I'm collaborating with people, on these projects. So working as teams, how can I make better decisions, right? Whether it is the idea is validating in the public or not, picking those signals. So it's always, I think, building that muscle, and it depends on what I do personally. Like writing on Twitter, building that muscle of writing. No, if I do it like probably in another 5 more years, I might be in a position where I can write like bigger articles. I don't know.
Oh yeah. Do you have like long-term goals with that kind of stuff? Like with each
Yeah,
of these lanes?
absolutely. So what I do as a founder building products, I want to build a startup eventually. I want to build a profitable, whether it is VC backed or bootstrap, doesn't matter. I want to like build something for myself and for others, and do it in the most right way possible, at least to me, in my own lane. When it comes to media, again, asking great questions. How can I hold a conversation? How can I so I get shit scared when it comes to public speaking. So if you go see me 6 7 years ago, I wouldn't even have the courage to talk to you, even if you're not in person. So I've developed that. Okay, I'm extremely introvert, but I have to develop this skill. How can I do that? Just hopping on one-on-one calls with many people, then doing hosting some events, then being part of some events as guests. Then so it's kind of like a transition process that I've begun like 5 6 years ago. I'm still in the path of pursuing that. So that's why media. How can I actually like hold a conversation? Probably eventually I want to do like something media oriented, have my own show bigger, uh being having like in-person events, I don't know. So I think same thing, community. That's one thing I've kind of realized that I can do this. So one thing I want to make sure is that I'm definitely not Michael Jordan. 100%. Hell no. I'm not talented at all. Even I do believe that right now.
No
Completely.
way.
One thing, again, I'm not a champion, but I do have a championship mindset
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's interesting.
where I wouldn't let go things easily. I would pursue them with intention and do it in a very, very, very micro way to reach the macro. Building startups, I never went to business school, never built businesses, never sold anything, but build that muscle over time. Launch simple side projects, build that small little people of community network. Being an introvert, I would never imagine that I actually have an ability to like host an event, build a community around me, but I'm doing very small. So all these things I'm doing as a founder, content creator, community builder, these all have bigger goals, but I don't know when they're going to happen. That's not my biggest worry. My biggest concern is how am I kind of optimizing it right now to reach there. So yeah, everything is kind of counts to towards that mission of building that muscle.
Oh, that's great, and what a wonderful just visual that it's really not necessarily only about the things that you are doing. They are all important, and they all have their own little goals. But the fact that you keep doing them, that's what's the important part. I love this. It's kind of the what is it like the process is more important than the result, right? The path is the goal, not
Yeah,
the
that is the
goal.
reward.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. The what I also see in you is that you just lean into being an amateur and you're perfectly fine with it. A lot of people have a lot of perfectionism when it comes to showing up for the first time, right? They want their first SaaS to be perfect. They work on it for like a year. They want their first podcast episode to be perfect. They record like 10 different ones and they all kind of suck. They kind of stop, right? So are you just saying it's fine to put out stuff that is not perfect, but as long as you put it out?
So there is an interesting take I would say. I think people might like throw shit on me on Twitter for this. You have to be perfect to learn that perfection is not the right way. So I'm not saying that I woke up with this incredible mindset of, hey, let's build small things over time. No. So if I go back to like 2016, 2015, where I used to like, do many other things, I used to be like very, very, very minicular about like, okay, let's do this in the right way and spend a lot of time tinkering, not shipping. So I learned the hard way by failing and taking the shot, hitting the rock bottom. So I would say people actually should try to be perfect to realize how much perfection stops you to become actionable. So I learned that way. So then I'm like, okay, now I've decided like I'm now going to be perfectionist. I tried that, I failed. It's not going to help me. I kind of started experiencing the other side, like put things on, without being incomplete. For example, if you go back 2018, 2017, look at my tweets, you will find a lot of spelling mistakes, like literally, because the intent there is to like do action. So even those small little things, I used to like, tweet about some of the thoughts I had. So many grammatical mistakes. Again, English is not my first language. I've learned it by practicing it, right? And that's something I've become better over the time. Do things, in a way that feels, it might feel imperfect for others, but it will feel perfect for you, because perfection is the not right, is basically like, not the way. So that's my hard take, I would say. Experience, pursue perfection, so that you realize it's not the right way. Then you will like kind of won't go back to that phase. So being amateur, 100, hell yes, I would say. You actually also think about, if you think about it, you will be pressureless. You'll feel light. Nobody's going to watch you. There is no strings attached, and you can be like so authentic, so do things with fun. And I think that's the goal, right? Like, getting into that perfection is kind of like, if it is there.
I think that's also the cultural thing we just talked about, right? This external pressure, this where everybody tells you, oh, if you do this, then everything will explode and people will abuse the knowledge that they now have of you. Whereas that's just what you said. Most people aren't really watching. I always, and this can be great because they don't see what you're doing. It can kind of suck because you want them to watch, but it's not really about them not paying attention. I think it's about the fact that their attention is mostly inward focused on themselves. Like there's no person that cares more about you than you. Like nobody else cares. Like everybody cares about themselves the most, right? So what you do is kind of, you are a side character in most people's lives. That's really what it is, and that is perfectly fine. You don't have to be more than that, right? And this gives you a certain freedom to just be you and have your own little story, your own narrative, and live your life the way you want it. Because everybody else is so concerned with their main character arc that you can just do whatever you want. I think that's very freeing. I like that. Let's look at the flip side of this for a second, because you can stick with things for too long, right? If you're fine with being an amateur forever and you're not making progress, you could effectively waste time on a thing where other things could happen. How do you deal with this? When do you let go of a thing? Do you have a framework for this, or like a priority system?
Yeah, so I think it comes a lot with practicing self-awareness. So I feel like, yeah, absolutely true. You have to make progress. That's the whole point of putting into reps. Again, take my podcast, right? The first thing I did was I kind of looked back. So a lot of retrospect will help you realize, am I doing this the right way, or where is a slight improvement I can do? So always, I think my philosophy is always look for improvements. And if there is nothing to improve, or you're not feeling there's nothing there for me to like improve, that's where you stop. So for me, all of these projects, I had fun while it was there. Like I was building it, it was fun, kind of like, going after like certain features, or like take podcasts, going after certain guests. It was all fun. When I feel like it's not fun anymore, it's like becoming like a burden. It feels like an obligation. That's where you have to like stop. That self-awareness, it should be part of your DNA if you want to become better. Without that, it's really hard. Like you said, you're basically cog in the wheel. You're going to like go in circles doing the same thing without any improvements. So look for improvement. I would always look for, I think the framework, I don't know if it is a framework or not. Look for improvement. Always go back, do a retrospect of what you're doing. Be in third people's shoe, like other people's shoe, and view it, your own work, in their eyes, and you will see, oh man, this sucks. So take an example. Like last year, I launched this thing called Bluebee, and you were, thanks to you, were a big supporter of that. There was support. There were people saying that, hey, we'd love to do this. I built certain things, spent some time, again, not full time, but at least like, here and there. And at some point, it felt like I have to do this.
Yeah, it's kind of forcing
I
yourself. Yeah.
forcing yourself. So I was like, okay. I was going back and forth in the retrospect. Okay, is it the right way to like pursue this or no? So having that self awareness, you let go. So it's better to like let go. Don't give up. That's two. Those are two different things. Lot many people confuse about letting go versus giving up. I didn't give up. I'm giving up is not doing something again, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's
Letting
true.
go is, yeah, it
Making
is
room for the next thing, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
You're intentional. You're kind of opening up to another opportunity or another idea in terms of being a founder,
Yeah,
right?
and that
So
happened for you, right? That's exactly what happened after that. Can you tell me more about that?
yeah, so I kind of like struggled a lot, and I was like, okay, this is not good, because I thought I would use it and I'm not using it, the solution or the problem I have. And that's where I would ask people to start as well. Are you solving your own problem? Are you being your own first customer or first user? If you are not, then even like, don't even pursue. So I realized that late. Again, it happens. And then I was like, okay, this this actually brought me back to ground again. Let's start something new. Then I realized, since I'm a podcast host, since I spend a lot of time on research on my guests to make them feel like home, be very friendly when we talk. It's not like the first time, because most of the guests I talk, it's the first time. And the reason I do research is to eliminate that awkwardness and make them feel like, okay, I'm talking to a friend. In order to like do that, I have to like spend a lot of time. So I was like, okay, I have a full-time job back then. I'm working on my podcast, spending hours. Well, how can I save my time? That's when this simple idea, came to life, called Guest Lab. You just plug in your guest LinkedIn, URL, and the AI gives you, good research. I would say at the beginning, I convinced myself that this is it. Then after talking to people, this is not it. The AI is going to help you. It gives you a head start, right? It's going to help you take a few more steps when you're starting something. So then I realized, okay, again, self awareness. It's not going to be groundbreaking, even though it feels like in your own head. That's why people come in. That's why you have to do things in public. You have to talk to a lot of customers, users, potential users, and they will make you realize it's all about signal picking and being aware of what you're doing. So yeah, I'm having fun. I use Guest Lab every single episode of mine, and we have like a couple of paying customers. People are having fun using it, so that's all it matters at this point.
It's great to hear. I'm realizing something like this myself in my own SaaS business efforts that I do. Like there are tools that are fun, and then there are tools that are useful and fun. And the moment you see the difference between them, you cannot help but shift towards the one that is useful and fun, because it is about serving people, not just enjoying the process of building, right? A lot of indie hackers are, let's just say, very self-focused when it comes to building, because that's just what they do, that's what they love, and there's nothing wrong with that. I love coding, I love building stuff that I've never seen anywhere else before. There's a kind of a genius moment to this where you feel like, wow, nobody ever built this and I got to do it, right? There's a lot of self-centric thinking in being a maker. And I think we have to have this because we need to be the people to build it. But the moment you see other people latching onto it, I think Justin Jackson calls this pull from the market, like the idea that there's demand that is so strong that they kind of come at you and try to grab you and get your attention. The moment you find this in one thing and it's not in the other, it is the moment where you pivot. That's the moment where you see, okay, here's some potential. It's really cool. And I love the Guest Lab. I love the fact that you use it for your own stuff. Like this kind of dog fooding is generally a very good idea. I try to do the same with all the products that I build to kind of fit them into my own work. And seeing this for you is really great. Let's talk a little bit about your podcast for which you use it. Because first off, I really enjoyed the show. I had the fortunate, you made the fortunate choice to allow me on the show. That was really cool. And it's
Right.
also what? Yeah, exactly. Twice.
2 times.
That's right. So there's a whole celebration happening about that. Yeah, the show is fun. You have really interesting guests, and like you said, you worked yourself into becoming a much better interviewer that asks interesting and meaningful questions. Like it's really cool to watch this. Now, from the perspective of a software entrepreneur, is running a podcast something that you would suggest for other founders to at least think about? Like, is this something that can add a lot of value to a founder's life, even though they might be introverted? Like, kind of, we both are introverted at the core, but when we talk to each other, it kind of goes away, and then we just have fun, right? Because this is kind of more play than work. But is this something you suggest for other founders to start doing as well?
Absolutely. Hell yes. I wish I would have started a podcast back in 2018 when I was a maker, like doing my first product. I should have done media, some sort of media, especially audio, video back then. The reason is, um, there are so many upsides. One, the biggest of the biggest thing is you're interacting with some of the best people in the world. Again, if you choose to invite them on the podcast, right? A, your presentation skills, your expressive skills will increase massively over time. And B, it is going to help you build a personal brand around you. No matter what, like I think Naval said this famously in Joe Rogan's podcast, personal brands are way more important than, business brands. Like, Steve Jobs, personal brand, even though he didn't do anything, he's a personal brand.
Right.
Right now, Kanye, personal brand. Like, regardless of how controversial he is, he's a brand. Oprah, brand. Like Joe Rogan, brand. So the way you have to, I think in this day and age, the way you have to build brand, one of the ways is to, like, be part of the internet. And I think podcast allows you to add that personal touch, because you're on camera, you're talking, you're exploring, you're kind of brainstorming live, and it's going to live, at least, certain term. Like, I'm not talking about dinosaurs, but it's going to live forever in a way, because anybody can go back to that particular podcast and listen to two people talking interesting things. So I think there are so many upsides. Personal brand, you get to become better. Especially, I would highly recommend introverts to build podcasts, because whether it can be interview style like this or solo episodes. So my one of the things I want to do next is to actually launch a solo show,
Nice. I'm looking
where,
forward to that.
because you've done that before, and I love your, format. It's you come with some certain thoughts, you explore very authentically, naturally with the people you're listening, and I feel it takes some courage to do that, because I would say interview is very easy in my opinion, because I've done that. Before that, it was very hard, of course.
Yeah.
So you have to do certain things to make it easy for you. And I think the two reasons why I want to do like a solo show is because you learn a lot of stuff, and it's very easy to talk rather than write, especially if you're not born to be like a writer, or you don't have skill to write. Just start like recording. I would say just record audio. Don't even put yourself on camera, right? So again, baby steps. So yeah, 100, hell yes. It's tough when you think you have to have a show with a streamlined process in the
Mhm.
beginning.
That's a good point.
That's it's very tough. I think a lot many people, they realize, because they view, the Danny Mirandas of the world, thinking about, hey, this guy shipped 400 plus episodes, let me actually do another podcast. And I'm like, okay, I can't do that because it's not matching. So you should not compare your step 0 to someone else's step 10. That's ridiculous. So that's why I came up with this process of the way I do things. And you've been on the show twice. It's single take. That's it. So that I feel much more confident about, okay, I can do this again. There is no, so I come prepared. I talk to people in a friendly way, make them, human, and that's it. I don't have any intention to make this as a I don't know, like a drama thing. Like a lot many podcasts, they have effects, they have like music here and there coming. They're like, which is amazing. Not for me. So you have to have that. You have to write your own rules if you want to become a podcaster. Really follow that and improve over time. So in the beginning, there was no intro. It was straight up episode, and that's it. then I improved, like, okay, let me actually add an episode. Even intro, even in the podcast, the way I do things slightly changed. So small improvements. So I feel I will eventually go there where it's like, hire a big producer, like, and bigger editor and all that. So the jazz is not the right way to start. It will, the jazz will come later. So have your own rules, but hell yes to that question. 100%. People all, I think there should be more podcasts than ever, I would say.
Yeah, and there's space, right? That's the wonderful thing. I was actually like on this show last week, as this comes out, I was talking to Yongsoo Chung, and he has a very well produced podcast. Like that guy's show has editors and all kinds of like voiceovers and stuff, and that is fine. There are people who love this kind of show, then there are people who love this kind of show, and then there are people who love your kind of show, right? There's so many potential to find the right audience for you that your style will, if it is approachable, which I hope it is, like everybody has interesting thoughts and everybody has something that people can relate to. So if there's something there, you will find the people who like it. And like you said in the beginning, like you're not for everybody. If you're working in public, and podcasting is effectively working in public, you are for somebody. You just have to find the right somebodies and put the other people that are not those somebodies, shove them towards somebody else who they are for or who is for them. Right? I think that's one thing that I'm noticing in our kind of podcaster community. Some audiences, there's no match necessarily between two hosts, but they can get some people from their own audience that are not too happy to the other audience, and then people from that audience into their own. There is enough space for all of us. I think so. I very much
I
agree.
think the pie is bigger for sure.
Yeah. And it's a growing pie, right?
Yeah, it's oh my god, it's a ridiculously bigger pie. I would say focus on your piece. Don't aim for the whole pie.
Oh,
And I think
that's a great idea.
This is for not just podcasting, even generally in life, right? Like, you can't make a million friends. You will only have one or two or five or 10. That's it. So less is enough is what I think. I repeat myself. Podcasting, same thing. You can't really attract Lex Friedman level audience, you know, because that's his game. Again, choose your own lane, pick your own lane, but be better in your own lane. That's really important. If you're not becoming better or improve yourself from your previous episode in podcasting case,
Yes. That's the secret, right? The secret to Lex Friedman, to Joe Rogan, to Tim Ferriss, and all these people that we admire as these massive podcasters. Like, they are at episode 650. They've done this for decades. Particularly Joe Rogan, he has like a history that goes like back to the 80s or whatever. Like, these people have been in radio, they've been in spoken word forever, they've been in the communities forever, for a long time. And again, that's their step 10, maybe their step 100, right? And if you start today, all you really need to do is to get a mic. We might not even need a microphone. You can just use your iPhone, because that is a good enough mic for most cases. And you just need to start recording. That's really where it is, right?
that's it. The step one is really important, and Joe Rogan wouldn't have I would bet my life he never would have gotten the $250 million deal with any company when he started.
No,
So
for sure.
it's just reps. He's becoming so much better now. It's like, it's in his blood. So I think the biggest goal is, how can a skill become part of your DNA?
Yeah, I like that. And it kind of boils down to your build the muscle approach, right? Like, it's not part of your DNA yet when you start. It's kind of in your mental DNA. You want it to be in your physical DNA, but you have to put in the work and you have to consistently show up. That's certainly what it is. All right. Okay. Well, where do people go if they want to see you show up? Huh?
Yeah, I think mostly Twitter, I would say. My handle is at 5HARATH, because I couldn't find SHARATH. So I kind of like,
Lead
modified
speak.
it a little bit.
Awesome.
Got creative there. Instead of S, I went with 5. So that's where I'm mostly, hang out. I do have a podcast, Arvid was here a couple of times. I host this podcast called The Undefeated Underdogs. I'm an underdog. I've been underestimated my whole life by a lot of people. I love being underestimated, because it's a fuel for me. And I talk to people who are in the same boat and how they turned obstacles into opportunities. So I host that. But yeah, you can also reach me out through email, sharath@hey.com.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Nice.
if you
Cool
have any
plug.
questions, yeah,
that's
do
that's a
reach out.
flex. The one word hey.com. I got one with my first name as well, so we're both in the same boat. That is really cool. Yeah, that like your podcast is fun because it's real. I really appreciate that about it. Right, there are a lot of shows that highlight like some CEOs' successes in some billion-dollar company. Those are not underdogs, and they are also not undefeated. Like they live a life of projection and stuff. People on your show are really, really cool, insightful, and they teach. Maybe this brings us back to the beginning of this conversation. Like all you do, a lot of what you do is teach by example, by showing up relentlessly. And I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for doing this. And thank you so much for talking to me about it today.
Oh, that means a lot coming from you, Arvid. I love you so much for who you are, and I kind of steal some of your authenticity and kind of rub it on me so that I can be more authentic. So appreciate
Nice.
you
Aw.
for inviting me. This has been fun conversation, and I love
Thank you. I love you too,
talking to
buddy.
you.
That is really, really cool. Thank you. Have a wonderful day, and thanks for being on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
And that's it for today. I will now briefly thank my sponsor, Acquire.com. Imagine this. You're a founder who's built a really solid SaaS product. You acquired all those customers, and everything is generating really consistent monthly recurring revenue. That's the dream of every SaaS founder, right? Problem is, you're not growing for whatever reason. Maybe it's lack of skill or lack of focus or lack of interest. You don't know. You just feel stuck in your business with your business. What should you do? Well, the story that I would like to hear is that you buckled down, you reignited the fire, and you started working on the business, not just in the business. And all those things you did, like audience building and marketing and sales and outreach, they really helped you to go down this road, 6 months down the road, making all that money. You tripled your revenue and you have this hyper successful business. That is the dream. The reality, unfortunately, is not as simple as this. And the situation that you might find yourself in is looking different for every single founder who's facing this crossroad. This problem is common, but it looks different every time. But what doesn't look different every time is the story that here it just ends up being one of inaction and stagnation, because the business becomes less and less valuable over time and then eventually completely worthless if you don't do anything. So if you find yourself here, already at this point, or you think your story is likely headed down a similar road, I would consider a third option, and that is selling your business on Acquire.com. Because you capitalizing on the value of your time today is a pretty smart move. It's certainly better than not doing anything. And Acquire.com is free to list. They've helped hundreds of founders already. Just go check it out at try.acquire.com/Arvid, it's me, and see for yourself if this is the right option for you, your business at this time. You might just want to wait a bit and see. If it works out half a year from now or a year from now, just check it out. It's always good to be in the know. Thank you for listening to The Bootstrap Founder today. I really appreciate that. You can find me on Twitter at ArvidKahl, ARVIDKAHL, and you find my books and my Twitter course there too. If you want to support me and this show, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, get the podcast in your podcast player of choice, whatever that might be. Do let me know. It would be interesting to see. And leave a rating and a review by going to ratethispodcast.com/founder. It really makes a big difference if you show up there, because then this podcast shows up in other people's feeds. And that's, I think, where we all would like it to be, just helping other people learn and see and understand new things. Any of this will help the show. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful day, and bye-bye.